They thought Earth was finished. After the first wave hit, and a quarter of the planet's population was vaporized in coordinated orbital strikes, the Galactic Council broadcasted their victory across every known system. They called it a necessary purge, a message to primitive species who refused to submit. Earth hadn't just refused. They'd told the Council to go to hell in every language known to man, and now most of humanity was gone. Cities burned, skies choked in black ash, oceans boiled in some places. For the first few months, survivors scraped life from ruins, too broken to fight, too angry to surrender. No one knew exactly why Earth had been chosen. Resources? An ancient grudge? Or maybe just because we were inconvenient and loud. But what the Council didn't understand, what they never could understand, was this. Earth had men like Commander Rhett. He stood on the edge of a collapsed military outpost in Siberia, the wind howling past his torn coat, looking at the stars with bloodshot eyes. He hadn't slept in 3 days. His ribs were cracked, and his left leg had been stitched up with a piece of aircraft wire. But none of that mattered, because today was the day he'd push the button. Behind him, buried under the ice and scorched rock, was Project Ember, Earth's last retaliation protocol. Not a bomb, not a fleet. Something far worse. A signal embedded with code that would hijack the neural interfaces of Council ships and rewrite their defense AI mid-flight. It had taken the world's smartest and most bitter scientists 5 years to make it, a final scream from a dying world. Except Earth wasn't dead. Rhett wasn't doing this out of revenge anymore. He was doing it because Earth deserved to be feared. He limped toward the bunker doors, past the frozen bodies of what used to be a Council scouting party. He'd killed them himself. Took his time. They didn't expect a man with one arm and a scarred face to rip through their armor with a plasma blade. But humans adapt. Pain, trauma, grief, they're fuel here. Inside the command room, the generator hummed weakly. The countdown interface flickered. Rhett stared at the console, the blinking cursor waiting for final confirmation. Activate Ember protocol? He clenched his jaw. This wasn't going to bring back his daughter, or his brother, or the soldiers who went silent when the thermobaric rains started over Tokyo. But maybe, just maybe, it would make the Council think twice before calling Earth primitive again. His hand hovered, one breath. Then he pressed the button. 2 systems away, aboard the Council High Chamber, the moment was marked by silence. No alarms, no warning, just ships dropping mid-flight, AI cores melting down, orbital defense arrays turning inward and firing at friendly targets. Whole fleets were gone in minutes. Council leaders screamed for answers, but no one could explain why their most advanced tech turned against them like a rabid dog. By the time they realized it was Earth's doing, over 47 planetary strongholds had been reduced to ash. Entire species, those who voted for the purge, were wiped off star maps before they could broadcast a plea. And then came the message. A simple broadcast in old Earth dialect from a beaten-down command bunker. Rhett's face appeared, unshaven, hollow-eyed, scarred. He didn't shout, didn't posture. He just said, "You wanted silence from Earth, here's yours." And then he cut the signal. No more diplomatic envoys, no more peace talks, no more pretending humans were part of some interstellar order. The Galactic Council went quiet, because there was no council anymore. Only ruins and stories whispered in fear about the species that refused to bow, and punished those who thought they could play God. The silence stretched far beyond the remains of the Council. Across the galaxy, systems that once bowed to the Council's authority stood still, like prey holding its breath after the lion roars. Broadcasts from the High Chamber ceased. Command orders vanished into digital ether. Trade routes went dark. Colonies that had never even heard of Earth now spoke its name with caution, the way ancient tribes once whispered about fire. And at the center of that storm stood Rhett Morrow. He sat alone in the collapsed communications chamber of the Ember site, staring blankly at a half-melted monitor, the glow reflecting in his tired, sunken eyes. The broadcast had gone through. The protocol worked, better than any of them expected. Ember was designed to blind the Council, maybe cripple some fleets. But this, full-scale systemic collapse? That was something else. Status? He muttered to himself, fingers tapping on a scorched, glitching screen. Static scrolled over most systems. Whatever was still functioning on Earth wasn't talking. He knew some bastards out there must still be alive. Underground bunkers, remote outposts, the northern survivors who vanished into the old Canadian boreal zones. Someone had to be listening. But nothing came back. Just the cold hum of machinery, the occasional groan of shifting ice, and the ghosts in his head. He reached into his coat pocket, pulled out a small black data shard. It was smooth and warm to the touch, the last remnant of his daughter's recorded voice. Her final message before the Council drones hit New Athens. She was only 11. She didn't scream in the recording. She just asked if he'd be home soon. He wasn't. He was leading a counteroffensive in orbit. He'd promised her he'd come back. That Earth wouldn't fall. That humans always fight back. He lied. In the orbital ring above what used to be the trade hub of Virelian Prime, Council remnants scrambled like panicked insects. Fleet Commander Jun's voice cracked through the comm channels, trying to coordinate the retreat. His face was pale, sweat dripping as he barked orders at broken ships. The human signal, Ember, hadn't just blinded them. It had rewritten core AI code. Ships were now thinking Earth first. One of his own carriers, a Council dreadnought, turned and obliterated a fleet of civilian haulers before its own hull collapsed from system overload. Jun watched in horror as thousands died in a flash of blue fire, all because of a planet the Council once called pre-hyperdrive vermin. "Lock down all outbound transmissions," Jun screamed. "No more data leaks. If they know how deep this infection runs..." But it was too late. Across multiple systems, splinter factions were rising. Races once cowering under Council rule realized the old power was gone, and worse, that Earth might be the new apex predator. Rhett finally made contact 3 days later. A crackling voice came through a weathered relay post in what used to be the Amazon command basin. It was Major Calderon, an old warhound, presumed dead after the Biogen siege. "Rhett, you crazy son of a bitch, is it true?" "It's done," Rhett answered, voice flat. "Council's broken. Signal went through." A long silence followed. Then, "You sure we didn't go too far?" "They went too far when they thought we'd forget what they did." Calderon exhaled sharply. "You just made Earth the most feared name in the galaxy." "Good," Rhett said. "Fear's all they ever understood." There was no celebration, no speeches, no cheering, just a grim understanding. Earth had climbed from the pit of its own destruction, not with hope or unity, but with vengeance. They weren't humanity's best. They were what was left, and that made them dangerous. Rhett leaned back, eyes closing. For a second, just one, he let himself feel something like satisfaction. Then the other truth crept in. The retaliation hadn't ended anything. It had started something far worse. On Tarnex 9, a mining colony on the far reaches of the Outer Belt, a rebellion broke out less than a week after the Council's fall. Slaves, mostly subjugated species, stormed their overseers with stolen tools and acid sprayers, but they didn't declare independence. They declared allegiance. To Earth. Their message was crude, scattered across outdated comms. We stand with the ones who bled. We stand with the fire planet. Earth did not kneel, neither shall we. The idea was spreading. But so was the fear. 3 council survivors held a private meeting in a hidden orbital vault around the shattered moon of Grithal. They had no titles anymore, just names, worn and trembling. I warned them about Earth, one of them hissed, her face gaunt, eyes burning with guilt. We called them savages, but they adapted. They endured what would have broken us all. Another, an older male with mechanical implants replacing most of his skull, slammed his hand on the table. This isn't just retaliation. This is the rise of something worse, a species that no longer fears extinction. They're fractured, damaged, the third one muttered. They can't organize. They don't need to. Fear is organization. You saw what happened. Even our fleets turned on us. They sat in silence, the realization dawning. Earth had done something none of them thought possible. In its weakest hour, it had become the most dangerous force in the galaxy. Not because of numbers, not because of technology, but because it had nothing left to lose. Back in the Ember facility, Rhett was moving. He didn't know how long the systems would hold. The cold was creeping back in, and his left leg was failing. He dragged a scavenged pulse rifle across the corridor, stripping what he could from fallen council tech. He wasn't just a soldier anymore. He was a symbol now, and symbols didn't rest. A static message played over and over in his headset, a call from survivors in the African shield zones. They'd intercepted a council supply drop. Defectors were appearing. Some aliens had switched sides. Rhett didn't trust them, not yet, but he understood why. The galaxy respected brutality. Earth had finally spoken their language. He looked up through the shattered ceiling. The stars stared back, cold and indifferent. But something had changed. He could feel it. Humanity wasn't asking for a seat at the table anymore. They were building their own table, from the wreckage of those who once ruled over them. And if the galaxy didn't like it, let them try to stop it. The sky above the Ember facility never stopped bleeding ash. Thick clouds swirled like bruises across the frozen horizon. Every morning, the sun tried to break through, but its light always died somewhere between smoke and frost. Rhett wrapped his half-torn coat tighter, pushing through waist-deep snow toward the comms relay tower he'd managed to rewire 2 days prior. The cold stung his lungs with every breath, but he welcomed it. It reminded him he wasn't dead. Not yet. The wind howled around him like ghosts, whispers of those left behind, those who didn't live long enough to see Earth strike back. Inside the tower's skeleton, he kicked the generator. Once. Twice. The third time, it hummed to life. The transmission had been looping non-stop since yesterday. Coordinates confirmed. Survivors requesting extraction. Resistance forming. Code word Iron Wake. Repeat. The voice was female. British accent. Sharp. Determined. Somewhere south of the equator. That narrowed it down. Rhett leaned in, trying to isolate background noise. He caught the faint pulse of machinery and distant gunfire. Maybe a subterranean compound or an old UN stronghold. He couldn't be sure. He opened the outbound channel. This is Rhett Morrow, Commander, Earth Defense. Respond. Silence. Then static cracked back. Holy hell, Morrow, you're alive? He recognized her voice now. Captain Adira Langston. Former Black Ops intelligence. Rumor had it she led a failed assassination attempt on the Council's high chair 2 years before the purge. She was never seen again, until now. Alive enough, he answered. You said extraction. How many? 300. Maybe more if we can move through the sewers. Council drones hit us hard 2 days ago, but they're not organized anymore. Their AIs are still scrambled, thanks to whatever you did. We've got no birds left in the sky, Adira. You'll have to move. We're already moving, she said, and we're not just escaping, we're rallying. Rhett, there are more of us out here than you think. Not just in South America, everywhere, and not just humans either. He froze. What do you mean? There was a pause. Then Adira spoke again, this time quieter. Some of the Xenos turned, former council enforcers, traitors, engineers. You destroyed something bigger than they were ready for. A lot of them are terrified. Others, they want in. They see Earth as the last real force standing. Rhett's knuckles whitened around the console. Let me make something clear, he said coldly. This isn't a damn refugee charity. We didn't do this to make friends. We didn't survive alone either, she shot back. We're not just fighting anymore, Rhett. We're becoming something else. If you want Earth to rise, you better start acting like a leader, not just a weapon. The line went dead. The following week brought news Rhett wasn't ready for. A council outpost on Dakara 3 was captured by a coalition of rebel species, all former client races of the council, and leading them was a human. His name was Tanner Holt, a former Mars colonist turned mercenary who'd vanished before the purge. Somehow, he'd rallied both human and alien defectors under a single banner. Their flag? A scorched earth symbol, black on red, with a single phrase beneath it. We remember. Rhett stared at the holoscreen broadcasting their victory. Holt stood atop a pile of ruined mech suits, armor scorched, raising a captured council blade in one hand and a human flag in the other. He looked like a hero. Rhett knew better. He'd trained Holt, knew his tactics, knew his temper. The man was brilliant and unstable. He'd never fight for justice. He'd fight to rule. And now he was becoming the face of Earth's retaliation. Rhett clenched his fists. They were building a movement, and they were doing it without him. Deep in the crater ruins of former Berlin, now called Zone 19, Rhett finally made his move. He descended into the forgotten subway tunnels beneath the dead city. Old resistance signals had been traced here, and if the stories were true, this was where the last functional Earth core AI had been hidden, offline since the first orbital strike. He found it behind layers of radiation shielding and collapsed concrete, barely intact, flickering faintly in the dark. He placed his hand on the access pad. Override protocol. Commander Rhett Morrow. Authorization Black 0. The AI booted slowly, groaning like a beast waking from centuries of sleep. Welcome back, Commander. It spoke in a flat, genderless voice. Would you like to resume Earth War Doctrine Protocol? Yes, Rhett said, but with a revision. Input revision request. We're no longer alone. Humanity is split. Some want peace, some want power. But this war isn't over. I want complete autonomy. Give me full control over defense networks. Activate old orbital cannons. Access the Odin array if it's still alive. Warning, the AI replied. Odin array was deemed too unstable. Reactivation could result in... Do it, Rhett growled. Let the galaxy know Earth hasn't gone soft. Processing took 60 seconds. Then came the cold confirmation. Odin array reactivated. Defensive sovereignty granted to Commander Rhett Morrow. He walked out of the tunnels a new man, not a fugitive, not a survivor, but a commander of Earth's last superweapon. News spread fast, too fast. The Odin array fired its first warning shot 2 days later, vaporizing a rogue trader ship that crossed into Earth's upper orbital grid without clearance. The explosion could be seen from Africa to the Arctic. Rhett's message followed shortly after. No charisma, No diplomatic polish. Just a simple truth. Earth doesn't negotiate. We retaliate, stay out of our skies, or burn. It divided what was left of humanity. Some called him a tyrant, others called him the only reason they still existed. The Council's bones weren't even cold, and now the galaxy watched as Earth fractured into warlords, factions, ideologies. And Rhett stood at the center, neither savior nor villain, but something more dangerous, uncompromising. Adira reached out again. "You're turning Earth into a prison planet," she warned. "You're pushing away potential allies." "I'm not here to make the galaxy comfortable," Rhett said. "No, but you are risking everything we rebuilt." "Let me ask you something," he said slowly. "Do you trust the same galaxy that tried to erase us?" "No," she admitted, "but I don't trust what you're becoming either." Then she said something that stuck with him. "The Council died with silence, but Earth might fall to its own voice." Rhett didn't answer. He shut off the channel. From the shattered moon of Europa's drift, Tanner Holt was watching Rhett closely. His lieutenants brought news daily of the Odin array's reactivation, of Earth's heavy lockdown, of Rhett refusing alien aid. "He's choking the movement," Holt said to his inner circle. "That bastard wants Earth isolated. That's not how we rise." A younger lieutenant asked, "Should we confront him?" Holt smiled coldly. "Not yet. Let him build his little bunker kingdom. When the time's right, we won't take Earth by force. We'll let them ask us to save it." And in the shadows of the galaxy, something even darker was watching. Something old, something that once feared the Council, but now feared Earth more. Something preparing for the next great war. The silence had become a scream. Not in sound, but in consequence. A scream that echoed through every system still reeling from the Council's fall. The name Earth no longer meant homeworld. It meant fire, judgment, unpredictability, and above all, it meant vengeance without mercy. But inside the Odin array, Rhett Morrow sat in darkness. The reactivation had drained nearly every power source buried in the old launch bunkers. Half the weapons were unstable, orbital coils overloaded, defense satellites blinked in and out like dying stars. But the message had been sent. Earth was not to be touched. And that, for now, was enough. Still, the pressure was growing. In the last 2 weeks, 8 human factions had broken off and declared independence from Earth Command. 4 had begun forging alliances with non-human colonies, promising a new order. One of them, Tanner Holt's New Dawn, had started absorbing rogue fleets and openly broadcasting recruitment messages with Earth's insignia twisted into something darker. The Earth crest split by a red dagger. Rhett watched one of Holt's transmissions on a cracked holoscreen. His old student stood in a sleek black coat, flanked by former Council Tech specialists and a few polished xenodiplomats who used to serve as slaves. The speech was short, arrogant, and aimed directly at him. Rhett Morrow gave Earth its revenge, but now he seeks to bury it behind locked doors and silence. We are not afraid of the stars. We are not relics. We are evolution. Join us or be left behind. Applause followed. Banners unfurled. And Rhett? He stood and left the screen behind, walking alone through the vast corridors of Odin's central command like a man hunting ghosts. He wasn't angry at Holt for taking power. He was angry because Holt was right. Adira Langston had moved north with the resistance column. The survivors from South America had carved through drone fields and scorched deserts, reaching the old Mexican defense wall. Along the way, they'd been joined by scattered survivors, ex-soldiers, scientists, scavengers, and even 2 alien defectors who helped them hijack a long-dead transport crawler. What she saw as they crossed the Rio ruin chilled her. Earth was no longer dying. It was rebuilding, and not under Rhett's banner. Scavenger cities had formed in the ruins of Dallas and Salt Lake. Human flags flew over metal towers, but most were different. Red. Crimson. Variants of Earth's emblem modified with phrases like strength through flame or Earth first always. One phrase repeated the most. New dawn. Rhett's losing ground, her lieutenant muttered. No, Adira corrected. He already lost it. They stopped at an old U.S. military complex, half sunken in dust. Inside they found caches, not abandoned, but stockpiled. Weapons, comm units, power cells, and symbols burned into the walls. Holt's army had been there, preparing for something big, something coming soon. Back in Odin's core, Rhett stared at an incoming alert. The blinking signal carried a rare classification. Obsidian-level threat. That was pre-Council Earth code. It hadn't been used in 20 years. He tapped into the feed. A satellite relay, one of the last functioning long-range drones in deep space, had picked up movement around the Narthus grave. That name hadn't been spoken in decades. Narthus was a star system blacklisted by the Council. Long before the Purge, before Earth even entered galactic politics, Narthus had been marked as taboo. No patrols, no research, no public access. Just dead stars, silent planets, and one thing the Council had never explained, the Vault. Rumors said it wasn't a weapon or a prison. It was a warning. And now, something had come out of it. Rhett patched the footage. It was grainy, distorted. The satellite had burned out seconds after capture. But what little it recorded made his skin crawl. A shape, not a ship, but a mass. Blacker than space, moving with intent. It didn't show up on scanners as heat or radiation. It simply was, like it didn't belong in physical space at all. As the feed ended, the system logged its last identifier tag, Unknown Entity, 01-A, designation Sable. Earth hadn't just broken the Council. It had awakened something they kept buried. Rhett stood in silence. Then, without hesitation, he opened every locked line of communication left in the solar system. He sent the message without protocol, without encryption. To all who remain, this is Rhett Morrow. Odin has detected a non-classifiable threat emerging from the Narthus grave. It is not Council. It is not human. It is moving toward known systems. Prepare accordingly. Do not ignore this. You've been warned. He didn't wait for replies. There wouldn't be many. Most didn't believe in legends. But Rhett had spent enough time killing gods to know one when he saw it. Tanner Holt received the message the same night. He didn't blink. Instead, he turned to his inner circle aboard the Deliverance, a Council-built warship now fully under his control. The vessel's dark core pulsed with stolen tech, and experimental fusion drives far more powerful than anything Rhett had. He's panicking, Holt muttered, trying to distract us, sowing fear. Classic Morrow. One of his lieutenants, an alien with jagged bone protrusions along his jaw, spoke cautiously. Commander, we have received similar signals. Faint. Deep space. Something is out there. Holt scoffed. Let it come. Earth doesn't kneel for old gods, not anymore. He pointed at the star map. Systems were lighting up in red, Holt's influence growing. We move on, New Alaska. It's the last relay point Rhett controls. Once that falls, the Odin array is cornered. And Morrow? Holt smiled. I'll make him an offer. Step aside, or I finish what the Council started. In the quiet ruins of East Berlin, Adira set up her own broadcast. She wasn't interested in Rhett or Holt anymore. She saw what was really coming, not from within Earth's borders, but from far beyond. And she remembered the old stories, from Council defectors, from prisoners who had been forced to guard the vault on Narthus, from researchers who whispered in code about Sable, the thing the Council didn't destroy because they couldn't. The stories said it wasn't alive. It wasn't dead either. It was the memory of extinction itself. And now it was awake. Her message wasn't a threat or warning. It was a question. If humanity survived its own wrath, what will we do when something worse arrives? The stars over Earth began to dim, not from clouds, not from war, from something bigger. In the void where Narthus once stood, stars bent sideways, light twisted, entire constellations disappeared from telescope feeds. And something spoke, not in language, not in sound, but inside minds, deep inside bunkers, underground labs, and military archives. Scientists started to scratch their arms, their necks, their eyes, as if something was crawling beneath their skin, whispering, reminding them of every failure, every war, every genocide Earth had ever committed. Rhett sat alone as the Odin. Whispered one final update. Contact imminent. Unknown force approaching. Estimated time to system breach. 27 days. And beneath it, a secondary message. Psychological interference detected. Personnel at risk. Memory corruption probable. He smiled grimly. It wasn't fear. It was clarity. The Council had tried to erase Earth, and Earth had erased them in turn. Now the void itself was coming. And Earth was the only species reckless enough to punch back. 23 days until contact. The Odin array's internal clocks ran without pause, each second ticking louder than the last inside Commander Rhett Morrow's head. He sat motionless in the war room, an old steel chamber built before the purge, its walls patched with broken circuitry and hand-welded plating. Across from him, a digital map of the Sol system flickered. The stars were going dark. Literally. One by one, outer system surveillance drones were going offline. Not destroyed, not jammed, just gone. Erased. Like someone had reached into the data stream and cut them out of existence. "Do we have visual confirmation?" Rhett asked. Odin's AI responded in its calm, indifferent tone. "Negative. No light spectrum data can penetrate the void mass, suggesting dimensional compression translation?" "There's a shadow devouring space, Commander, and it's hungry." Rhett rubbed his jaw, fingers rough and scarred. He'd seen many enemies. Council death squads, rogue AI, civilian uprisings. But this wasn't war. It was something worse. It was inevitable. He stood up, turning toward the secondary monitor. Holt's forces had seized the new Alaska orbital station overnight, just as Odin predicted. Another Earth relay lost, another piece of the network carved away. Holt was moving faster now, fueled by momentum, alliances, and ego, and Rhett had to admit, he was good at building an army. But he wasn't ready for Sable. None of them were. On the edge of the Titan wreck fields, Tanner Holt looked out across a newly repaired fleet. Dozens of former Council warships hovered like angry giants, now branded with the twisted New Dawn symbol. Their AI cores had been stripped and rebuilt with Earth-based tactical logic, designed not for diplomacy, but for pure aggression. He turned to his war chief, a former Kirelian war tactician named Rourke, one of the only alien defectors Holt trusted. "Did the broadcasts go out?" Holt asked. "Yes," Rourke replied. "Every open frequency. The outer colonies know who leads Earth now. You. And Morrow? Hiding behind that broken satellite array. Let him rot." Holt narrowed his eyes. "I don't want him dead yet. I want him to see what leadership looks like." He didn't say the rest out loud, that Rhett had become a relic, a stubborn remnant of old-world pain. His brutality made him a hero during the Retaliation. But this was no longer about revenge. This was about domination. And if the rumors about Sable were true, Whoever controlled Earth's last armies would be the only thing standing between survival and total extinction. Holt planned to be that man. 17 days until contact. Adira Langston stood over a makeshift holotable in the reclaimed ruins of Chicago. The resistance had spread fast, not thanks to Earth's fractured leadership, but in spite of it. Civilians, veterans, even former enemies stood side by side under her command now, and every single one of them was preparing for the same thing. The end. "We got confirmation," her scout said, voice tight. "Narthus system's gone. Like, gone, not destroyed, just missing." She looked at him. "Missing?" "It's been ripped out of space-time, nothing left, like it was erased." Adira's jaw tightened. They needed unity, not pride. She pulled up 2 transmission routes, one to Rhett, one to Holt. She opened a wide-channel encrypted link and sent the same message to both. "Forget your feud. Sable is real, and it's coming. If we don't unify, we die." She wasn't optimistic, but she had to try. The irony wasn't lost on her. Earth had finally achieved galactic significance, just in time to become the last line of defense against a force that devoured entire systems without firing a shot. 12 days until contact. Rhett finally made a choice. He stepped into Odin's command chamber, armored up for the first time in weeks. His black combat suit was patched, scorched, and blood-stained, but still functional. A relic, like him. "Odin," he said quietly, "open all lines to Earth and beyond. Priority alert. Authorization? Black Zero override. From this point forward, no more hiding." The AI hesitated. "That will expose Earth's location to—" "Everyone already knows, and those who don't, will." The system activated, across every still-functioning comm relay in the galaxy, on colony walls, scavenger towers, stolen council satellites. Rhett's voice returned. Raw, cold, unfiltered. "This is Commander Rhett Morrow. Earth's retaliation silenced the council. But we made a mistake. We thought revenge was the end. It wasn't. It was the ignition. There's something coming. It's not a fleet, not an empire. It's not even alive the way we understand life. It's the thing the council tried to keep buried, and we, humanity, woke it up. If you can fight, fight. If you can run, don't bother. There's nowhere left to run. I don't care if you fly a New Dawn flag, resistance patch, or came from another damn star. If you bleed, you're on my side. Meet me at the Mars line in 10 days, or prepare to be swallowed whole." The signal ended, and for the first time since Earth's sky burned, hope began to flicker again. Not peace, not safety, but something older. Purpose. 6 days until contact. Tanner Holt arrived first. His ships dropped out of warp near the Martian debris belt, hundreds strong, bristling with weaponry and arrogance. Rhett was already there, with barely half as many ships, but his forces were hardwired into Odin's automated defense grid, giving him home field advantage. The 2 men met face-to-face inside the Erebus conflict station, a council relic orbiting Phobos. Holt looked younger than Rhett remembered, clean armor, polished expression, surrounded by yes-men. "You look like hell," Holt said, smirking. "I am hell," Rhett replied. "Glad you made it. I didn't come to kneel. Didn't ask you to." They stood there in silence for a long moment. Then Rhett handed him a data slate, Sable's readings, star maps, satellite evidence. When Holt finished scanning, his smirk faded. "How do we kill it?" he asked. "We don't," Rhett said. "We just survive it long enough to find its weakness. And if it doesn't have one? Then we show it what Earth really means." 2 days until contact. Across the solar system, the great fleets of Earth began to unify. New Dawn, Resistance, Odin Command, even outlaw colonies and fringe alien species, they all answered the call. For once, flags were lowered. Grudges paused, and ships gathered in orbit around Mars like a shield wall from an age long gone. At the heart of it all, Rhett and Holt stood side by side in the Erebus war room. No more speeches, no more blame, just cold strategy. Rhett tapped the table. "This is where it starts." Holt nodded. "And maybe where it ends." In the silence that followed, something pierced reality. Not a ship, not a fleet, a presence. As if the laws of physics forgot how to function, the void began to bend and snap outside Pluto's edge. Ships malfunctioned, sensors failed. Pilots screamed in their heads, not from sound, but from a whisper inside their skulls. You had your chance. Now you belong to silence. And from the darkness came Sable. Vast, unmeasurable, alive and not. A memory of oblivion wrapped in form, and Earth would meet it head-on. No one breathed when Sable arrived. Not that breathing mattered. Most of the pilots in orbit had sealed themselves inside reinforced command shells and neural link cockpits, their minds jacked into war systems too large for any one person to control. It wasn't a matter of holding the line. It was about not blinking first. Because what they saw wasn't a ship. It wasn't even a shape. It was a hole, a smear of nothing across the stars, tearing reality open like a ragged wound. The space beyond Pluto buckled, then cracked. Ships that had no names emerged, their hulls glistening like wet bone, moving without propulsion. No lights, no heat, just motion, coordinated, precise, cold. They weren't crewed, not in the way Earth understood crews. These were extensions of a thing too large to exist in one place. Tools of a mind that had no sympathy, no emotion, no agenda beyond erasure. The Council had called it Sable. Now it had arrived. And Earth was the first target. On the Erebus command station, Rhett Morrow stood with Holt in the central war chamber, watching data feeds turn red by the second. Entire squadrons blinked out of existence. No wreckage, no explosions, just gone, like something had rewritten the memory of their existence from the universe. "Eye control failing on Grid 7, barked one of Holt's lieutenants. "The machines are going silent. It's infecting them." "We shut them down," Rhett said. "Immediately. Sable's using them as neural gateways." "You mean it's thinking through them?" Holt growled. "Number worse." Rhett's eyes narrowed. "It's replacing them." He slammed a command key and sent a pulse signal, shutting down every autonomous combat drone on Earth's side of the line. "Manual control only. From here on out, it's men who fight, not code." Holt looked at him. "You think we can hold that line with muscle and blood?" Rhett didn't answer. Because the truth was, no, they couldn't. But they'd damn well try. Out in the void, Adira Langston flew lead on a resistance strike wing. Her ship, Bitter Sky, was old, pre-Council retrofit, jagged and patched with scavenged armor. But she trusted it more than any sleek warship Holt or Rhett had fielded. Because this ship was earned. It had bled. The swarm had reached Neptune's orbit now. Hundreds of Sable drones moved in silence, disassembling everything in their path. Satellites, ships, even small moons. They didn't consume resources. They didn't repurpose. They just reduced. Adira's voice cut across comms. "Lock missiles. Target leading edges. We're testing for reaction patterns." The resistance fleet launched a coordinated barrage. Thermal nukes, magnetics, and plasma darts fired in synchronized waves. They hit. And nothing happened. No explosions, no impact. The missiles disappeared mid-flight, like they'd never been launched. Then came the response. One drone turned, not toward a target, toward Adira's mind. Pain screamed behind her eyes. Memories scrambled. She saw her mother dying again, her unit burning, her first love screaming from behind shattered glass. The grief came so fast she nearly blacked out. but she grit her teeth and fought back. "Fall back! Now! They're trying to invade cognitively!" Her wingman wasn't fast enough. His mind folded in on itself, eyes bleeding before his ship spiraled into a gravity pocket and vanished. Adira screamed his name, but it was already too late. Mars' orbit descended into chaos. Rhett's defense grid collapsed along its outer perimeter. Holt's ships were now holding the front, their war-forged discipline and council-grade weaponry making them the new backbone. But even Holt couldn't keep pace. "2 more wings lost! We're being erased in clusters!" Rourke growled, slamming his claws into the console. Holt turned to Rhett, furious. "We need to hit it with everything. Fire Odin." Rhett shook his head. "Not yet." "What the hell are you waiting for?" "A wound," Rhett snapped. "We fire the array too early, we miss. We need to find the center of its cognition. I'm not wasting the last orbital railgun Earth has on a guess." Holt looked ready to throw him through a wall. Instead, he turned away and opened comms to his fleet. "All units, focus fire on reaction nodes. Find what hurts it." For 3 straight hours, the battle continued. Earth's unity began to fray. Sable was learning, faster than anything they'd ever seen. It started mimicking Earth's tactics. Ships vanished, only to reappear as twisted mirror images, ghost versions of Earth warships, armed with corrupted versions of Earth's own weapons. Memories taken from captured minds. Adira watched one of the mirror ships obliterate an entire wing, using a distorted voice recording of Rhett himself, commanding their systems to shut down in his tone, with his words. Even Rhett froze for a moment when he saw it. "It's mimicking me." "Yes," Odin's voice replied, "because it sees you as the origin." "What does that mean?" "It means it's evolving toward the source of retaliation." Rhett stared at the black shape looming across the void. It wasn't just erasing Earth. It was becoming it. And that's when he knew this wasn't an invasion, it was assimilation. Sable wasn't a destroyer. It was a collector of pain, a record of trauma, a thing that learned by forcing its victims to relive their worst sins, then copying them into a permanent state of suffering. Every soldier lost didn't just die. They became part of it. And Rhett knew exactly what that meant. There was no winning, only wounding it hard enough that the galaxy remembered Earth wasn't just a victim. It was a curse. He turned to Holt. "It's time." Holt nodded. "You sure?" "No. But you're going to do it anyway." Rhett activated Odin, the final weapon. Hidden deep within Earth's orbit was a kinetic mass rail, the Odin core lance. It wasn't a bomb. It wasn't a missile. It was a rod of planet-forged tungsten, the size of a battleship, launched at light-adjacent velocity. No engine, just gravity and rage. Once fired, it couldn't be stopped, couldn't be redirected, couldn't be negotiated with. Just like Earth. Rhett input the target coordinates, the one place where Sable had hesitated. A slight gravitational flicker near what used to be Neptune, the center of the storm. He pressed the trigger. The Odin lance fired. The launch shattered the station's lower decks, killing power to half of Odin's systems. But it flew, and 3 minutes later, the void cracked. Not exploded, not burned. Cracked, like glass under pressure. The shape buckled, twisted, screamed in every ship's audio feed, even though no sound crossed the vacuum. Pilots vomited. Holt collapsed to one knee. Adira felt blood pour from her ears. And Sable blinked. Not gone, but hurt. Rhett whispered, "That's right. We're still here." Then Odin went silent. The rail destroyed itself in the recoil. Power dropped across Earth Command. And into that silence, Sable shifted. It began to retreat, not in panic, not in surrender, but in thought. Like it had found something new in humanity, something it hadn't expected. Defiance, pain, memory that bites back, and as it vanished into the deep void once more, Earth's systems began to stabilize. One by one the stars returned, not all, but enough. The silence afterward was unbearable. Ships drifted, wounded soldiers cried. Holt stood at Rhett's side, armor cracked. Adira docked an hour later. Her hands were shaking, her face pale, but her voice steady. "No speeches," she said quietly. Rhett nodded. "Good," he answered. "I'm not in the mood." They looked out at the battered remains of Earth's fleet. What remained, what survived. And Rhett said the only thing that mattered now. "Sable isn't dead, just watching. And next time it'll come stronger. But so will we." 3 weeks after the Odin lance strike, Earth was quiet again. Not peaceful, not safe, just quiet. The kind of silence that came when every surviving soldier had screamed their throat raw, buried their dead, and patched up enough hulls to pretend they hadn't just stared into the face of annihilation. Above Mars, the Erebus station floated half-crippled, patched with makeshift scaffolding and scavenged metal. Most of the lighting flickered. Airlocks hissed from weak seals. It was a corpse held together by the will of the living. Rhett Morrow stood on the shattered observation deck, arms folded, staring into the void where Sable had vanished. His armor hung from him like old skin, scarred, dented, streaked with dried blood. He hadn't slept since the battle. He didn't feel like a hero. He felt hollow. Holt approached behind him, boots loud on the cracked floor. "You still think it's out there?" Holt asked. "I don't think." "I know. Why hasn't it come back?" Rhett didn't answer right away. He watched the stars blink. One of them dimmed, not fully, just a flicker. Then he said, "Because it's watching. Learning. It came to understand us. We wounded it before it finished. And next time? Next time, it comes wearing our faces." Meanwhile, on Earth's surface, Adira Langston met with resistance survivors in the ruins of Geneva, or what was left of it. The air still carried the scent of scorched glass and rust. Some buildings had been melted to bone-white shells. Others were full of growth, nature returning like it always did. She crouched over a broken council archive core. Her techs had pulled it from the vaults of a former intelligence compound. What they found inside made her skin crawl. The council had known about Sable, not just suspected, not just feared. They had studied it. Buried deep in encrypted records was something horrifying, something Rhett, Holt, and the rest had never been told. Sable was not an alien species, not in the traditional sense. It was a product of Earth, or at least something Earth had triggered. Adira played the audio file again. A council researcher speaking in panicked, translated tones. The original cognitive mass was located in the Sol archive decades ago. Origin unknown, but patterns suggest it emerged after the first nuclear detonations on Earth, like a psychic echo. Trauma given shape. It responds to collective suffering, draws strength from planetary-scale atrocities. Every war, every genocide, every erasure adds to it. The more pain a species carries, the more susceptible they are to infection. We believe Earth's species is the most potent source of Sable's expansion, not victims, not enemies, catalysts. Adira shut it off. She whispered aloud, "We didn't wake it, we birthed it." And now it was coming home. Back on Erebus, Rhett stood before Odin's flickering control hub, staring at a cluster of messages marked Priority Black. Most were encrypted, some were damaged, one had no source at all, just a timestamp, 53 minutes ago. He played it. At first only static, then a voice, his own. "They think they won. Let them believe it. We only needed to learn. Pain is a blueprint. When I return, they'll open the doors for me." The feed cut. Rhett froze. He stared at Odin. What the hell was that? Origin unknown, Odin replied. Voice match, 99.4% Commander Rhett Morrow. He slammed his fist against the console. I never said that. Possibility. Mimicry. Cognitive replication. Sable may be integrating human consciousness patterns. So it's pretending to be me? Number not pretending. A pause. Becoming. Rhett didn't speak for several seconds. Then quietly. Get me Adira. Now. They met inside the ruins of an old Martian observatory. The roof was torn open, allowing a broken view of the stars above. It felt fitting, like they were talking beneath the eye of something waiting to strike. Adira wasted no time. She threw a data core onto the table. Council knew. Rhett scanned the file. Each word cut deeper than the last. The implications were monstrous. All our wars, Adira said quietly, every atrocity, every act of mass trauma, we didn't just carry pain, we amplified it. Rhett looked up at her. This thing didn't come for us because we were weak. It came because we're a mirror. She nodded. And every time we kill in rage, every time we retaliate, we feed it. Rhett ran a hand over his face. The scars there had faded into pale lines. Symbols of what he'd survived. Symbols of what they'd created. So what now? He asked. Do we stop fighting? Let it consume us? Let the galaxy rot? No, Adira said firmly. But we stop feeding it mindlessly. We stop letting our pain become prophecy. If Earth's going to fight, it fights with intention. We don't burn cities to show we can. We burn them when there's no other choice. Rhett looked into her eyes and saw the same thing he carried. Exhaustion, guilt, fury. But also something rarer. Resolve. She still believed in a version of Earth worth fighting for. He wasn't sure he did, not anymore. But someone else did. In the shadowy remnants of the Deliverance, Holt's personal warship, now docked and mostly gutted, whispers had begun. His second-in-command, Rourke, had been caught accessing forbidden archives. Not just council data, Sable blueprints. And not to destroy them, to understand them. When Holt confronted him, Rourke didn't deny it. You don't get it, Rourke hissed. Sable isn't a disease, it's the next step. Why do you think it didn't finish us? It saw us as raw code, unfinished. We are compatible. Holt raised his pistol. You're infected. Number, I'm awake, Rourke grinned. And then he lunged. They fought in the dark, weapons clashing against metal walls. Holt, brutal and fast, managed to snap Rourke's arm and shove him into a sparking relay. But as the alien's body twitched and fried, he kept smiling. You're next, Commander. Then he died. And Holt was left alone. But something lingered in the air, a scent of familiarity, a whisper in the dark. He was right. You are the future. Holt staggered back, weapon trembling, and for the first time, he didn't feel like the strongest man in the galaxy. He felt like the next host. The fracture came fast. Within days, Holt withdrew his fleet from Mars. No explanation, no message, just silence. Some said he was reinforcing his territory. Others said he'd gone rogue. Rhett knew better. He called Adira. He's been touched. By Sable? Number by ambition. He paused. It's worse. Adira didn't respond. She didn't need to. They both knew what was coming. Civil war again. This time, not over Earth's place in the galaxy, but over whether Sable was an enemy to destroy or a god to serve. The stars dimmed again. Not because Sable had returned, not yet, but because Earth was splitting apart. The aftermath of the battle had left the planet surrounded by broken ships and broken ideologies. Tanner Holt had disappeared with a third of the surviving fleet, taking with him a war-forged following of humans and defected aliens who now called themselves the Sable-born. Their message was clear. We do not fear the void. We are the void. And now they were preparing to make that literal. Odin's long-range sensors caught strange emissions from Jupiter's broken moon bases. Holt was building something there. Something vast, something organic, something that pulsed with the same frequency Rhett had seen during the psychic scream Sable sent through the galaxy. He wasn't building a weapon. He was building a gateway. He's trying to merge with it, Adira said, reading the data with a numb expression. Rhett didn't speak. His jaw was locked tight, knuckles white on the console. He's going to open the door again, she added. Wider, on purpose. No, Rhett finally muttered. But they both knew the truth. Holt didn't want to survive Sable. He wanted to become its prophet. Inside Jupiter's magnetic belt, deep within the molten ruins of Callisto's orbital ring, Holt stood at the center of a pulsing black structure, a half-living fortress grown from Sable's own code. The structure hummed with invisible frequencies, its walls wet with oily veins, its circuits made of memory fragments stolen from the minds of the dying. He had renamed it the Atrium of Remembrance, because that was Sable's real function, not destruction. Preservation. Sable collected. It remembered. Every scream, every betrayal, every genocide. It filed them into existence, so they could never be forgotten. It didn't kill because it hated. It killed because it archived. And now Holt wanted to make himself the final entry, the one who bridged humanity and the void. A voice echoed through the chamber, but it wasn't alien. It was Holt's own. You have been shaped by the Council's sins, by Earth's mistakes, by vengeance. Let me rewrite you, he smiled, and whispered back, I'm ready. Rhett arrived at Callisto with only one fleet. The Resistance, Adira at his side, hundreds of ships still bearing Earth's original colors, battered, unpolished, real. He hadn't reached out to the other factions. Not the fringe colonies, not the alien alliances. This wasn't about politics anymore. This was personal. He stood on the bridge of Iron Wake, a repurposed dreadnought retrofitted from Council wreckage. Its walls bore the marks of dozens of battles, blood splatters that had never fully washed off, carbon scoring from near-fatal hits, a hatch where a young pilot had died, and Rhett had carved her initials with his combat knife. This ship remembered. And that's why it was perfect. Status, Rhett asked. We're in orbit. No movement yet from the atrium, said Adira. No, it's moving, he said darkly. It just doesn't need to move fast anymore. He turned to the comms officer. Send him a direct message. To Holt? Number to the thing inside him. The message was short. Come out and face me one last time. The atrium pulsed. A single tendril of black energy reached from its underbelly and latched onto a Council-era relay station, repurposed to become a transmission organ. And then, like a corpse coughing up its last breath, Holt's face appeared on Iron Wake's holoscreen. But it wasn't really Holt anymore. The features were too smooth, the voice too layered. Rhett's voice echoed behind it, then Adira's, then others. Every voice Sable had stolen. Rhett, it smiled, you should be proud. You gave me shape. You showed me what suffering looks like when it's weaponized. I didn't show you anything, Rhett said. You stole it. Wrong, it said calmly. I absorbed it. That's what pain is for, isn't it? To be carried forward, preserved, never forgotten. You're not memory, Rhett growled. You're rot. Holt Sable tilted its head. And yet, I remember everything. Do you, Rhett? Do you remember the colony on Persephone 12? The civilians you shelled to stop a council rearmament? The children you knowingly sacrificed for a tactical win? Rhett didn't flinch. Yes. You could have stopped it. I didn't, Rhett said. Because war doesn't leave room for clean hands. Sable smiled wider. That's why you're beautiful. That's why you belong in me. Adira cut the channel. We're wasting time. No, Rhett said. I needed to hear that. He turned, eyes hardened. Prep the lance. They had only one left, a single tungsten lance, not nearly as large as the Odin rod, but enough to pierce the atrium if aimed right, at its neural spire, where the living code merged with physical memory. But this time they wouldn't fire it from orbit. They'd fire it manually, from inside. Rhett suited up in silence. Old combat armor. Jet black. No insignia. Just matte steel and grit. Adira watched him load the lance warhead into the modified drop pod. You go down there, you don't come back, she said. I'm not supposed to. She grabbed his shoulder. You think this ends if you die? It doesn't. The rot will grow. Holt's followers will rebuild it. People want monsters now, Rhett. They want something to make sense of their pain. He looked at her, tired and raw. That's why I have to go. He climbed in. Before the hatch closed, he said the only thing that mattered. Burn the atrium, even if I'm still inside. Then the pod launched. The drop was faster than light. He plummeted through Callisto's atmosphere like a spear, cutting through radiation storms and magnetic fields. His armor screamed against the force. Systems burned out. By the time he crashed into the atrium, his HUD was down and his left arm was numb. Didn't matter. He'd landed exactly where he wanted. The spire. He walked through corridors that pulsed like arteries. The walls were wet. They whispered names. Some he recognized. Some he didn't. Commander Hallen. Private Jules. Sergeant Morrow, Rhett's brother, killed by mistake. Every ghost spoke as he passed. Not as accusations, but reminders. When he reached the spire, Holt was waiting. No armor, just pale skin. Eyes black as night. A mockery of the man Rhett had once trained. His voice was calm, but beneath it, Rhett heard thousands of others, trapped, fused, fading. You shouldn't be here, Holt Sable said. I'm always where the dying is. You could join us. Let the pain end. It doesn't end, Rhett said. It just spreads. He raised the detonator. And so do I. He hit the switch. The spire didn't explode. It imploded, like a thought being erased. The atrium began collapsing inward, screaming in every language Earth had ever spoken. Ships in orbit watched in stunned silence as the entire structure folded into itself, the energy release wiping out nearby systems and casting shadows across Callisto's surface for a full 10 minutes. Rhett was gone. But so was the infection. Sable didn't die. It simply lost its anchor, its voice, its mirror. 1 month later, Earth didn't celebrate. There were no parades, no medals, just rebuilding. Adira stood in front of a half-repaired city hub in Nairobi, speaking to a gathering of leaders, humans, aliens, broken factions finally coming back together. She didn't talk about Rhett like a hero. She talked about him like a man who carried too much and chose to burn with it rather than pass it on. They buried a symbol, his broken armor, in a crater near the Arctic where the stars looked clearest. On the plaque, they etched no rank, no title, just a line he had once spoken before the Retaliation. We don't fight because we're noble. We fight because we remember. And somewhere, in a far corner of the galaxy, a black star twitched, not in anger, not in grief, but in curiosity, because memory never truly dies. But Earth had finally learned how to live with it.